I've always been pretty pretty surrounded by social justice and more the philosophy and conversations around social justice because of my family. I grew up with very politically active grandparents, and my mom worked for the public defender's office, and I also was born, raised, and educated in Oakland. And Oakland is an extremely political city with a very rich social justice history. We're the home of the Black Panther Party, and one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement is from here, and we were one of the hubs of the anti-war movement. So there's all of this really rich culture that I think really lives in everyone who is from here, and certainly in me. Um, and even though that was true, before becoming an environmental climate justice activist,
Mhm.
I really thought that anything that was climate or environmental related was a white issue and was something that you had to have a pretty high amount of privilege to care about and fight for. And, it was because I was being fed that narrative by mainstream media. And, but when I was around 13, I was a freshman in high school. I had the chance to go to an action that was targeting Phil Tagami, who, again, like you said in your intro, is a very prominent developer in Oakland,
Mhm.
and who was at this time and still is trying to build a coal terminal through West Oakland, which is a community that is predominantly working class people of color. And it was at this action where I sort of had this realization and also education about what environmental racism is and
Right.
how central environmental racism is to environmental injustice, and how wrong that narrative that I believed was, and how actually destructive it was, because it takes away from what is actually happening, which
Right.
is Black and brown, poor, indigenous people getting years taken off of their lives because of this, racist pollution that is rooted in violent and exploitative capitalism. And that was sort of when my social justice background synced with my understanding of climate and environmental justice. And now we're here. When I hear the word environmental literacy, and when many people like me hear that word, we think, stats and numbers and words that we don't understand, and like things that are too complex to understand. And to me, environmental literacy is understanding the reality of environmental injustice and of climate change and of all of these other things. And you don't have to know fancy figures or numbers or, terminology to be environmentally literate. All you need to know is that, for in the case of this coal terminal, what you need to know is that these wealthy developers are trying to build a coal terminal through a community that is predominantly working class people of color, and that coal terminal will poison those residents who are already experiencing extremely high rates of health issues that would be exacerbated by this coal terminal. And all of that is happening for the benefit of these wealthy people and at the expense of these working class Black and brown people. People that come from communities where, environmental literacy isn't commonplace, we are written off and told that our understanding and our experience is not valid and does not make us environment or climate justice activists, because we don't have the frankly colonized, whitewashed environmental literacy language. And so I think it's really important to recognize that people's experience is environmental literacy. You know, young people saying, I want a planet to live on. I don't want my community to continue to suffer from asthma and strokes and heart and lung disease. Like, that is environmental literacy, and we need to respect that as such. I mean, I think that it's definitely an important piece of how we get to a place where there is a foundational understanding of um, what's happening, you know, of coal terminals through West Oakland and refineries in Richmond and um, you know, pipelines through indigenous land. Like, we need to understand those things in the way that I was able to understand it during that initial action that I went to, in order to get people on board and in order to move forward and make the change that we need to make. Because we need to understand that those things should not be normal. We should not live in a society in which we treat people in that way, in which we literally tell citizens that they are disposable, that they are not worth as much as dollar bills, you know, that is exactly what's gotten us to where we are. And so we need everyone to understand that. And to me, that is what environmental literacy means.